Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting of the Saco City Council to order for Monday, September 20th, 2021. And if you'd all join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you very much. We have a couple of special items tonight under General, and the first up is item A, recognizing the Saco Little League 9 and 10 and 11 and 12 teams. The Saco Dayton Little League Majors team won the District 4 championship. After winning the District 4 championship, the Majors Little League team from Saco Dayton advanced to the state championship held at Old Orchard Beach. After losing their first game to Cumberland, North Yarmouth in a pitcher's duel, they were forced to work their way through the losers bracket to compete for a chance at a rematch. After wins against Meadowbank Valley and Augusta, they advanced to play Bangor. The winner would move on to play Cumberland in the state championship. A 3-run home run in the 5th inning broke a scoreless tie and led to a 6-0 victory, setting up the rematch. The team rode a one-hitter to a 5-1 victory, forcing a second, if necessary, game. In Game 2, the team found themselves down 4-0 and 6-3. The team continued to battle, tying the game up in the bottom of the 5th inning and winning in dramatic fashion in the bottom of the 6th to capture the state championship and represent Maine in the New England Regional Tournament in Bristol, Connecticut. While in Bristol, the team went 2 for 2, securing victories over the eventual New England Regional winner, New Hampshire, and perennial powerhouse, Rhode Island. While their play on the field spoke for itself and placed them amongst the most competitive teams to ever represent the state, equally impressive was the way they handled themselves off the field that made us thankful to have been a part of it. The team was made up of number 0, Hayden Warren. Number 2, Noah Fullerton. Number 3, Ben Indorf. Number 6, Ryan Gagnon. Number 9, Will Tripp. Number 11, Colton Cross. Number 12, Logan LeBlanc. Number 13, Owen Thompson. Number 14, Riker Borgerin. Sorry if I mispronounced that. Number 21, Brody Herdieris. Number 22, Connor Penny. Number 28, Quinn Cook. Number 99, Brennan Tabor. Manager was Jamie Gagnon, and coaches were Brian Thompson, Nick Tabor. And we'd like to invite you all up for a moment to receive a gift from the city of Saco. Thank you very much and congratulations. Also, on July 17th, Saco's 8 and 10-year-old minor division All-Star Little League team won the District 4 championship. The team was made up of number 1, Andrew Stryker, number 6, Gavin Thompson, number 9, Finn Canning, number 11, Blake Goulet, number 12, Dylan Cheney, number 15, Tyler Jury, number 17, Grayson Doyle, number 19, Wyatt Collega, number 20, Dylan Huth, number 26, Brady DeRocher, number 27, Daniel Cook, number 34, Nolan Brown, and number 42, Cameron Brady. Team manager was Justin Huth. Coaches, Chris Stryker, Kevin Brady. Please join the counselors and I in congratulating the boys on their hard work, dedication, and good sportsmanship. Congratulations again. Nice work. Up next is item B, Constitution Week Proclamation. Whereas September 17, 2021 marks the 234th anniversary of the draft of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention, and whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this magnificent document and its memorable anniversary and the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate the occasion. And whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of the proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America, designating September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week. Now therefore, I, William Doyle, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Saco in the state of Maine, do hereby proclaim the week of September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week, and ask our citizens to reaffirm the ideals of the framers of the Constitution had in 1787 by vigilantly protecting the freedoms guaranteed to us through this guardian of our liberties, remembering that lost rights may never be regained. In witness thereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused this, the seal of the city to be affixed. The 20th day of September, year of our Lord, 2021. Thank you. That brings us on to the next item of the agenda, which is item 5, committee correspondence to council. Any committee correspondence at this time? Councilor Hatch.
Thank you, Mayor Doyle. As council liaison to Age-Friendly Saco, I attended a meeting last week via Zoom, September 14th specifically, under the very capable leadership of, volunteer leadership of Gene Saunders. The Age-Friendly Saco organization continues to work on numerous initiatives which is linked to its mission of supporting aging in place within the Saco community. I just wanted to highlight 4 current initiatives that are in progress that I feel the council and the public should be aware of. The first is a program called Livable Communities Transportation Initiative. It's a new program in collaboration with Saco Parks and Recreation. And what they're attempting to do is to develop a last-mile, on-demand transportation program to provide our residents with rides to medical appointments, social events, and importantly, grocery shopping. Age-Friendly was fortunate to have received grant funding from the Maine Community Foundation to support an AmeriCorps volunteer that will be dedicated to the transportation program. They're expecting that this new initiative should be operational by the end of October. The second item is a continued collaboration with Saco Main Street to develop and implement an adaptive bike program. Through a grant received through the Huntington Commons Fund, Age-Friendly was able to purchase an e-bike, which many of you may have seen at local community events, and is working with the Portland Wheelers to develop a bike program similar to theirs that will enable our older residents in congregate living facilities to again experience the joy in a bike ride. That program is expected to be available by the end of this month, September. Third item on October 3rd, from 9 to 12 at the Saco Community Center, Age-Friendly will be hosting a COVID vaccination clinic in collaboration with the City of Saco and the Department of Health and Human Services. And then lastly, Age-Friendly has been able to expand their already successful Handy Tech Neighbor program using a $2,500 grant received from the Rotary Club of Saco Bay and Rotary District 7780. The grant funding was used to purchase additional Echo Dots and similar technology access devices, which will help our older senior population connect electronically to the services that they need. 2 lunch and learn sessions will, in collaboration with Saco Parks and Recreation, have been scheduled in October, and in those sessions, residents will be given an Echo Dot and taught how to use it. Andrew Dickinson, our friend here at City of Saco, recently created a video termed A Day in the Life of Alexa that demonstrates the functionality of these devices and how they can help our residents stay in their homes more safely. This video is being queued up now. It will be presented at a national conference this week. This program has received national attention, so kudos to age-friendly folks for elevating it to that level. And it will be part of an innovation showcase. So, Andrew, if you could play that video, that would be fabulous. Thank you.
Age-Friendly Saco is a volunteer community organization serving the city of Saco, a seaside community of almost 20,000 residents located in southern Maine. Our mission is to help our older residents stay in their homes as they age. In 2019, we launched our Tech Handy Helper program. This program was developed to help our residents bridge the digital divide by providing opportunities to obtain smart devices with volunteers to help guide new users through this process. One of the most popular trends to emerge from this program was the use of personal assistive devices like the Echo Dot and Google Home. These devices quickly demonstrated how they can help our older residents stay in their homes more safely as well as feel less socially isolated. This technology functions as a virtual personal assistant, as it listens to a voice and carries out commands. We know that there are various commercial medical alert systems to help our seniors feel safer in their homes in the event of a fall or an emergency. However, these systems are often difficult for our older residents on fixed incomes to afford. We are going to demonstrate today how for about $40 for a device, $8 for a smart plug, and as well as internet access, we can help our older residents stay in their homes more safely. We're going to demonstrate this by showing you a day in the life of a virtual assistant. Our Tech Handy Helper has come to install the personal assistant device for one of our residents. As you might know, it is not possible to call for 911 assistance through one of these devices. Age-Friendly Saco has worked with our local fire department to have their dispatch number added to our residents' personal assistant devices so that in the event of a fall or an emergency, they can ask their device to call the Saco Fire Department. Our volunteers also add in the personal contacts of each resident, so the personal assistant device will call each contact on the list until someone answers the phone. As we begin our setup for our resident, she requests that NPR be played as her wake-up call every day at 7 a.m. so she can wake up to the morning news. Once she's awake, she'll be reminded about the medication she needs to take that morning. For the midday meal, she asks her device to provide a recipe for a strawberry smoothie and then sets a timer for her daily 20-minute exercise regimen. She asks what the weather is like today as she prepares to go for a walk. When she leaves the house, she has a schedule on her device called Leaving the House that provides certain prompts such as, do you have your keys? Did you lock your door? Later in the day, she prompts her device to add to her grocery list. As evening comes on, she asks her device to turn on the lights and play quiet music. At bedtime, the assistant is asked to read a poem and play quiet music for half an hour and turn off the hall light. These personal assistants make it easier than ever to stay connected and check in with loved ones simply by asking the device to make the call. All in all, these devices can help our older residents stay in their homes more safely while still maintaining their independence and staying socially connected.
Thank you. That is a remarkable program. Any further committee correspondence to council? Okay, moving on to public comment. We have some folks that have signed up. First up is Rob Biggs. Again, for those that are providing public comment, please come forward to the podium, state your name and address, speak directly into the microphone, and please remember to stay within the 3-minute time frame.
Do I know how to ruin a room or what? Holy cow.
Something you said, Rob?
I'm amazed they stayed as long as they did, though. Very good.
Thank you again, guys. Thank you for coming in. Congratulations.
Okay, you all can leave too if you want. My name is Rob Biggs. I'm 92 Middle Street, Saco, Maine. I'm here as the Executive Director of Saco Main Street, and I'm reading a letter on behalf of Bill Dunnigan and Jeannie Dunnigan, owners of Sia Cafe. Mr. Mayor and City Council, my name is Bill Dunnigan. My wife and I own Sia Cafe in Saco, located at 9 Beach Street. I'm asking you to consider relief from impact fees on properties in our downtown area that have second and third floor office spaces that would like to convert the space to residential units. Saco needs affordable living in our downtown, and businesses are no longer looking for small office space in our downtown. Our space on the second floor has been vacant for over a year and a half, and no one has shown any interest. New residents in our upper floors will bring a life and economic value to Saco that would be very positive. In my case, in particular, having my second floor to continue to go unrented makes it financially unviable to continue to operate the building and thus the cafe on floor 1. That being said, as we go towards 2022, I need to seriously consider all options as to continue the operation of the cafe and the building as a whole. Our building in particular was once residential, and we're asking to convert it back to 2 living units on floor 2. An impact fee of $8,000 plus makes this option financially imprudent. My wife Jeannie and I have loved Saco and have enjoyed meeting and serving the residents and visitors here. When we bought this building in 2017, we made significant improvements to both the interior and exterior that improved the condition and the look of the building. By establishing Sia Cafe, I think you will agree we brought a vibrancy to a long vacant building and to the neighborhood as a whole. We want to continue to operate Sia Cafe, but we need you to help make this building work financially. Please, thank you for your consideration in this matter. Respectfully, Bill Dunnigan and Sia Cafe. And just since I got probably 30 seconds left, there are other buildings in our downtown that would like to consider this as well, but impact fees are significant, and in some cases, the concern over having to provide sprinklers on floors 3 inhibit any development at all, so we go on having vacant space above floor 1. Floor 1, the good news is that we are 100% leased at this point in Saco, and we're working on one more building that direction behind Bangor Savings, where there formerly was a bread bakery, and we're looking at another bread bakery moving in. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Up next is William Zafferson.
Good evening. My name is William Zafferson. I live at 1 Cortlandt Circle. Mayor Doyle and Saco City Councilors, thank you again for the opportunity for letting me speak in front of you again. Normally, I would like to rattle on about all the reasons why I think it's important that we develop a sidewalk that runs from Bayview down to Seaside. But instead of my words, I thought I'd like to share a few words and comments that you might have already seen in some of your emails, but the audience here tonight may not have heard. The comments came to me from individuals who asked that I share them. First, let me read a note from Daphne Warren. My name is Daphne Warren. I live at 47 Ferry Lane. I cannot attend the hearing Monday night, but I feel so strongly about the need for this sidewalk, and I hope this message means something to you. For 25 years, while walking along the stretch of Ferry Road that is no sidewalk, I have hoped the city of Saco would acknowledge that safety along that road is a problem. I honestly cannot think of another project within Saco that needs to be built, despite what maybe finance believes. Do any of those members live along the Ferry Road? Please consider this project to be a priority for the 2022 budget. Thank you, Daphne Warren. Now let me read a note from Inga Brown, who lives at 161 Simpson Road in Ward 1. Dear Saco City Councilors, I'm writing to express urgent support for the sidewalk design and construction cost study for Ferry Road that would provide the needed data to make biking and walking to Bayview Beach and Seaside Avenue a reality in the near future. This key infrastructure project should have been executed years ago. Today, serious traffic safety issues, climate change pressures, and Saco's goal to be a destination community for living, working, and playing make this forthcoming sidewalk project an overwhelming win-win for all community stakeholders. Your action and approval on this measure this evening is needed. All Saco residents, regardless of their ward location, can directly benefit from dedicated sidewalks that lead to the beaches for safe walking, running, and biking access. As a resident of Ward 1, my family and I fully support this key infrastructure study initiative that would one day allow us to park our car in a central location in town and then bike or walk to the Atlantic Ocean or along Saco's several beaches. Currently, heavy traffic on Ferry Road with narrow roadway does not provide enough safety to bike, especially with children or even older kids. And we've tried. It's simply too dangerous, especially in the summer. A full sidewalk network in this area of Bayview, Ferry, and Seaside would symbolize the importance and value we place on our beach offerings and would appeal to all generations of residents and tourists. Safer conditions for walking, running, and biking in this area of town would be a welcomed improvement and deepen our community's ties to and support for our remarkable beach areas. It would also signify a loud and clear response from Saco to curbing carbon emissions and reducing automobile pollution as more residents and tourists could find healthier means of commuting to the beach via foot and bike. I urge you to vote Monday evening in approval of the funds needed to complete the detailed study and design and construction costs for this important sidewalk network. Thank you for your positive movement forward on this issue. And most sincerely, Inga S. Brown, 161 Simpson Road in Ward 1. Okay, now here's where I chime in. We're hopeful that you acknowledge the safety issue and take the necessary steps to rectify. Dragging this out only heightens the potential for a disastrous event. I know that there's a concern of how the study is to be funded, but I ask you to find a solution without delay. One fund versus another fund follows a concept of one pair of pants, just different pockets. Over the past several weeks, I know you have received more than just a few emails in support, and I see several residents here in favor of a sidewalk. So I'll let them continue the dialogue. But I would like to just turn to the group and ask, do I have a show of hands of people who are in support of the sidewalk? Before I go, I'd like to acknowledge and thank our Public Works Department for fixing the 7-foot-tall reflective yellow sign marked with the words, "Motorists share the road," that was placed on Ferry Road in the area that we're discussing. That sign had been hit, but it has since been repaired. So thank you. Thank you for having that repaired. Thank you in advance for your support, and I appreciate your efforts to move this issue forward.
Thank you. Up next is Jane Karen.
Good evening. I want to thank you all for this time to offer my comment. My name is Jane Karen, Ward 5, 264 Lincoln Street in Saco. And I'm speaking in support of action item 9E, the Ferry Road sidewalk design. And I noted that tonight is a final reading, and I had a concern the finance department did not support this action, but I'm asking for your approval of this action item as it's necessary to create safe walking and biking access to Bayside Beach in that area of Saco. Please support this for the safety of Saco citizens and visitors. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Gail Chiazzo.
Going to sound like a broken record because we're all going to be saying the same thing. I live at 6 Gail Chiazzo. I live at 6 Cortlandt Circle. It's pretty dangerous to walk if you leave Cortlandt Circle and walk down the Ferry Road towards the beach or whatever. It's pretty dangerous. And Jim pointed something out to me, which I'm pretty sure is true, because as you know, most of the Ferry Road is double yellow lines. And a lot of elderly people won't go over those double yellow lines. They'll stay right in their lane. Even if there are people walking on the side of the road, they won't give you a little extra. It's just really dangerous. My grandchildren come to visit, and you know, I'm frightened to walk out on the Ferry Road with them. So I would appreciate any attention you can take to this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Dan Ross.
Hi, I just want to make a very quick comment. I know I'm also here to talk about the sidewalk. I know that this thing is set up so that you have to vote either yes or no, but I'd like to suggest that you not think of it as a yes/no question, but as an either/or question. I was here 2 weeks ago when everybody voted yes, and I think everybody agreed on the need for this. And now the question is it going to come from the general fund or is it going to come from the Route 112 budget? Honestly, I'm not an expert in municipal finance. I don't know whether it should come from the left pocket or the right pocket, as long as we all agree that we desperately need this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Lynn Copeland.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and councilors. My name is Lynn Copeland. I live at 526 Ferry Road, and I wanted to talk about two things. First, of course, the sidewalks. They're really so very much needed. And we watched this very cool video, and we listened to Gene Saunders, and we heard about age-friendly Saco and the seniors, and they have that really cool, I think some people have seen it at the car show, it was there, where the seniors get to go out on bike rides. Well, I would be scared to death to see them come down my street in this 0.8 mile section. So if we're trying to get the seniors out to see beautiful things, including the beach, this would be a pathway to that. And I think it's clear from listening to everybody else that the emails that have come in and people telling their stories are not just from Ward 4. It's others. I mean, it's our goal to live, work, and play, and to be friendly by nature, and this coincides with our values. And the previous speaker spoke about grandchildren. Well, I'm proud to say I'm expecting a granddaughter in October, and I hope next spring to be able to have my granddaughter out in the yard and not be concerned about, the road being too narrow and not having any space for cars. And they do have trouble, if somebody is doing yard work and they have the people come up with those trucks, it creates quite a thing, and there's nowhere for people in that mix. So the second thing relates to the first. Now, about the funding. And I know that last time that we were here, you took the money out of the TIF money and put it in the general fund. And I'm guessing that is why the finance department is not behind that. So I would ask you to reconsider that. Because if it comes out of the TIF money, it's better for all of us. If you understand TIFs, you know that that keeps our taxes down. But I'm reading the agenda today for this meeting. On page 46, PDF page 46, is an explanation about writing off over $1 million in ambulance fees. Over $1 million. $1,063,698. And some of it is going to be uncollectible, that's clear. But some of the others can be collected, and I think that we should be a lot more creative with that. There are a lot of organizations that can help, and I think that that could help with the funding here for sure. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Up next is Janet Bilson.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. 5 feet tall. I moved to Saco 1 year and 1 week ago. It is the most wonderful neighborhood. I live at 523 Ferry Road on Sunset Cove, and I watch the fishermen down at the marsh, and I'm privileged to watch the fishing boats come in and out, and the catamaran, the sailboat. I'm in heaven. It's paradise. I didn't even know Camp Ellis existed when I picked that house out. And I ride a recumbent bike. And that 0.8 of a mile, I have my heart in my mouth. I'm low on the ground. I'm already short. I have a little flag, and I ride as fast as I can to get down that stretch. When I'm on Seaview, I use the bike lane or the sidewalk. I feel perfectly comfortable. Same with Bayview. I ride all around Camp Ellis because people are going slowly there. But the rate of speed on that section of Ferry Road from Bayview down to Camp Ellis is way out of proportion to the use the neighborhood is being put to. There are bikers, joggers, people pushing babies, baby carriages, men and women, families walking, and everybody is jumping off into the grass in front of somebody else's house when someone's coming down that road at 45, 55 miles an hour. The police, I believe, have done a study at the rate of speed. So I strongly support the study, and I strongly support implementation of a reasonable design that will make the neighborhood safe. It is a dangerous place. I love it, but I fear for my life. I'm 80 years old in December, and I was very impressed by what Saco has done. This video was very impressive for elderly. I don't see very many people my age out there riding, biking, and jogging because we're not quick enough to get out of the way. So I think we'd have a lot more. And one more thing, I happen to have studied and planning and taught urban sociology for 25 years. One of the things that connects people who live on the same road into neighbors, into a community, is sidewalks. I am friends with the people next to me, one house on one side, one on the other side. I don't feel comfortable walking 2 houses down. Happens to be the man who sold me the house. He's a realtor. I won't go there because there's no sidewalk. I won't do it. So please, I hope you'll give us very serious consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Nancy Bancroft.
Good evening. My name is Nancy Perrin Bancroft, and thank you for the opportunity to address you again. I live at 2 Cortlandt Circle, which is on the corner of Cortlandt Circle and Ferry Road. And so whether I'm at my kitchen window next to the sink or on my deck or on a screened-in porch, I can see the traffic on Ferry Road. And it is a competition between vehicles and joggers and dog walkers and people pushing carriages and strollers. 2 people cannot walk side by side without one person being on the street. This Sunday, I drove to church. It was around 9:20, and I wished I had had a camcorder on my dash because I was driving along and there'd be joggers on this side and walkers on this side and bikers on that side, and it was a slalom. I was one of those old ladies who will cross the lines, but my car kept beeping, 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 because I was, crossing that line, and several times, and it's not a big stretch, and several times I had to stop because now there was a vehicle coming in the other direction, but not everyone does that. So really it is an accident waiting to happen. And I know that we're talking about a lot of money and some complications about land ownership and so forth, but when you think of a serious injury or a death, I think that safety wins out. So I ask you to really reconsider this and vote in favor of funding this sidewalk. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Up next is Catherine Theodore.
Good evening. I live at 5 Cortlandt Circle. I'm one of these neighbors. And I'm also speaking for my husband, Bob Bender, who lives at 5 Cortlandt Circle with me and is going to be 82 years old next week. We moved to Saco about 8 years ago, partly because it is a nice place for people to retire and have a good quality of life. When we first moved here, the road was a little less busy than it is now. We've also seen a lot of development in this part of Saco in terms of additional residents, because there's been a lot of new building on the road as well as houses behind Ferry Road. So I think the sidewalk has gone from being a nice idea to being really a critical need. My husband will no longer walk on the road with me, which necessitates us driving somewhere to park every time we want to take a walk. I think there's several ways this initiative, although it's has its sort of short-term critical need, also addresses the comprehensive plan that you're developing in terms of the objective for a connected mobility system to expand options for walking and biking. Also, in the area of environmental stewardship, I believe anytime I can leave my car in the garage, I'm doing a good thing for the planet. So the more we can walk, the more I can walk to the general store to get a quart of milk, I think it's better for all of us. And finally, your objective to promote health and well-being. I think this is really at the heart of the matter, and to increase walkability, access to nature, and similar qualities that foster wellness throughout a lifetime. And just to echo what Lynn Copeland had to say, all these age-friendly Saco initiatives are great, but if people can't go out their front door because they're afraid of getting hit by a car. Thank you.
Thank you. That is all that have signed up. If there's anyone who would like to speak during public comment that did not sign up, come forward and be heard. Okay, moving on to, my apologies.
No apologies necessary. Tim Valley, I am also a resident of 3 Cortlandt Circle. Thank you all for giving us this platform to speak on behalf of the Sidewalk project. I've been a resident of 3 Cortlandt Circle for 24 years. Raised our kids on that amazing street with some great neighbors, as you can see behind me. I'm an avid outdoors person. I'm a cycler, a runner, a walker. I think they would all attest to my reflective gear that I wear literally every single night when I get out on the street to protect myself and my wife. In fact, my wife has pretty much an entire wardrobe that is reflective. People drive by us the minute they see her jacket, and they stop. They roll their window down and comment that it's the greatest article of clothing they have ever seen with their eyes, because it truly is like shocking. I can't even walk behind her. It's that bright. But it's really necessary, because in our area, when we're trying to get down to Camp Ellis, we simply can't do it safely and with confidence. So I'm also, as I had mentioned, an avid biker. Sadly, I sold my bike this past spring. I sold it for one simple reason: I didn't feel safe. It's very disappointing to have to part with the bike, a road bike that I had used all the time, but due to safety, it was hanging on the ceiling of my garage for years, just simply because I didn't feel safe. And that's the tragedy of all of this, when we can't get out into the community and really appreciate what Saco has to offer, and it's disappointing. So I just simply urge all of you to please support the engineering survey on behalf of all of us, fellow Saco residents. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving on to item 7 of the agenda, which is approval of minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Councilor Berman, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Hatch. Any discussion on approving the minutes? Roll call vote to approve the minutes. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Brings us to item 8, which is consent items. There's one item on the consent agenda, and that is item A, approved schedule for October meetings. Is there a motion to approve the consent items?
So moved.
Councilor Hatch, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor McPhail. Any discussion? Roll call vote to approve the October meeting dates. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston? Motion passes 7-0. That brings us to item 9 of the agenda, that is action items. We will take a short recess, a short 5-minute recess, and then we will come back and meet for item A, which is a joint meeting with the school board. Not yet. Okay. Wasn't quite 5-minute recess, but let's get back at it and welcome the Saco School Board and also the Saco School Superintendent. Welcome members of the board, and Chair LaFortune informed me he will not be with us tonight, and as I believe School Board Member Johnston will also not be with us tonight. So welcome to School Board Member Truman, School Board Member Preble, and School Board Member Richard. Thank you. This is the one of the joint school board city council meetings. This kind of kicks off a mid-year review. It's in the charter that we kind of have this meeting and start talking about what maybe next year looks like as far as budgeting and as far as we get ready to start the budget process. So at this point, I'll open it up for Superintendent Ray or any school board members that would like to ask any questions or start the discussion. And then council, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions and bring up some points for discussion as well. Superintendent Ray.
So I guess I'll just, good evening, everyone. And I'll start things off. just kind of give you an update of what's happening on the school side of things. And certainly we have reopened school in a situation where we met our goal of 5 days per week for all children. Now, certainly that is not without its challenges right now, because as we know, the Delta variant is there, and we are certainly dealing with kiddos and staff who are coming to school in a situation where we do have to go through the quarantine process and the close contact piece. And that probably will be something that we live with for a significant amount of time. I think as we also head back to school, some of the other challenges that we face is looking at the way traffic moves through our city in the past 18 months. That has been an interesting piece. And looking at the ways that we move kids from one side of the town to the other side most efficiently and effectively. And that's not certainly without some hiccups and challenges. Then I'd say the real third challenge that the school departments face right now is no different than everybody in local business or anywhere else. Lack of employees is a challenge for open positions. Just the inability to get candidates to even apply. And so I see over the next year to 18 months or greater until things change about that we will continue to be just like everybody else with a lot of help wanted signs that is there. As we look at some of the regulations that come down from state and federal government, that may challenge us a little bit more as we look to make sure that all of our members need to either be vaccinated or require the weekly testing. I suspect that will put another strain on some of the resources that we have. But overall, just very proud of the way that students, staff, and parents have come back to school in the fall, because one of the things that we know is that we need to do everything that is humanly possible not to shut down our schools again, because kids and staff and everybody needs them in order for us to function as a strong community. So I know that this is the first of many meetings that we'll have over this year, and quite frankly, I would love to just open it up to questions that you may have or items that you wonder about a little bit. I will touch one other piece, because there are 3 things that are directly related to getting school started this year that we are working hard on. But there's that other piece of working on the building project, and that we have had a couple of meetings with the team in Augusta. We have had one building committee meeting, and currently we are working on a site inventory committee, and that's just what it is, inventory. Looking at all of the parcels of land that may be available, whether city-owned, privately owned, or ones that we wouldn't even think of that could be several lots compiled together, so that we can hopefully, I would say by the end of November, be able to present a pretty good map out to the city to say, hey, these are some properties that we should consider as we go through a kind of flow chart matrix to look at what would be the best selection for that. So that's kind of another big piece we're working on right now.
Thank you, Superintendent Ray. Any questions from the council? Councilor Hatch?
Good evening. I'm just curious regarding the COVID situation. 2 issues I'm just curious about. First would be vaccination rates within the schools, or just a general idea of that, and whether or not pool testing is moving forward or will move forward or can move forward. I understand it's difficult getting, you may want to do pool testing, but getting the testing kits is a challenge as well. So I'm just curious for an update on that.
So let me answer the 2 questions. First, let me answer your question on pool testing. Pool testing for our students will start on October 4th. We've been able to do 2 things as 3 communities working together, a bit for Dayton and Saco. We've hired 2 employees that will manage the pool testing, and we'll use the federal funds from each of the 3 communities to pay for that effort, which significantly reduces the cost. In addition, we have partnered with some of our local nursing programs that will bring about 10 to 12 additional nursing students that will come in and help facilitate the pool testing. Now, one of the pieces that we're unsure is that if pool testing will be able to serve as the weekly testing that the federal government will put forward to us, and because of the OSHA laws, we still have to wait and see. The school committee on Wednesday night will be taking a vote on whether that we will require all non-vaccinated employees to be part of that pool testing, which plays into the other percentage problem that we have when the survey and the requirements to roll out and report the percentage of vaccinated staff by DHHS, that was done in a way as pushed to school departments of it has to be de-identifiable, so we didn't have the ability to ask anybody's name on a survey. And so when you don't have the ability to ask or collect anyone's name on the survey, if someone doesn't fill it out, you don't have the ability to figure out why they didn't fill it out. We also had to give 3 options: yes, no, and I do not want to share. And if I do not want to share was on that option to report it to DHHS, that counted as a no. So as the week goes on, typically is how we deal with COVID. If we accept and pass the piece that people will be pool tested, then as a school district, we will be asking everybody for their status. And if a no or I do not want to share, then you'll need to be in pool testing. What was frustrating about the requirement and the kind of the press piece from the Department of Education is that we are working in 3 central offices with most of the same staff serving in all of them, and I had 3 different rates of how that was reported out. So that was a bit frustrating to see that it's pretty much the same players and all, but 3 different rates.
Thank you.
Councilor Berman, then Councilor Archer.
Yeah, thank you. More of a global question, I guess. You've already laid out traffic and hiring employees as 2 obstacles. Are there other goals the board or the administration has for the next year or 2? And what role can council play in helping you meet them and overcome the challenges?
So I'd say from an individual piece, again, our mission for myself was to come back with Back to 5 and make sure that happened. And, in the short term, Councilor Berman, that's pretty much what our focus is all day, every day. I think of last week, and I can think of 4 days out of 5 last week that were totally overtaken by COVID-related responses. In a couple of cases, or meetings with the commissioner, or X, Y, and Z that comes up throughout the week, certainly can change some things. I think what I really, if we look at a bigger goal for the school department, and I know that the other issue is that building piece, I really hope that by the next year, we'll be in a position to be thinking about next November of being able to have a to go for a vote to the public of what's there. That's kind of the timeline. Now, that's a very aggressive timeline, but the amount of work that needs to be done between now and then in order to hit that piece is something that's important. And then, the other piece is, I think, as the processes that we have here, we have some processes that are very good, but we also have some that need to be refined. And starting on Wednesday, we'll be starting our budget process and some training about how we present a different budget process to the community on the school side, and how we push that out and provide a little bit more detail as we move forward. So non-academic pieces right now for some of the work that I'm doing is a big focus, so that we can kind of move forward a little bit. Meg, the new assistant superintendent who is sitting here, Meg Parker, who came to us from RSU 21, really is leading up some of the academic charges in the district with the principals.
Councilor Archer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Superintendent, obviously we have some recent guidance, and it's still we're still trying to implement it at the federal DOL and the state DOL.
Yep.
What is this new mandate that will happen to all employers of 100 requiring vaccinations or the testing? What kind of impact is that going to have on our school system? Because that will require voluntarily identifying that you're vaccinated or you're going to be tested.
Correct. So that it will do exactly what you just said that it will do. Impact?
Yeah, what's that impact?
Certainly, so I think the biggest impact that I see is that, one, we have to put in, not only will we be pool testing and offering pool testing to our students and employees who wanted to, but looking at some of the other kind of remote pieces of how do you put that in, like how do we make sure that the transportation department can be part of that? How do we make sure that custodial staff who may work the night shift become part of that piece? So I think that will strain or make us adapt and have resources. We may have some people who say, I don't want to do any of that.
And we know that outcome would be what's being suggested by the government, determination? A complete refusal of that.
Yeah.
I'll be clear, just for.
And so we may have some employees who opt to go that path, and that goes back to point number 3 that I made, that hiring can be extremely difficult. Now, however, I would make my case that I believe that we need to make sure that we have staff who are in a position to either be vaccinated or tested, because our job is to make sure that we have students and staff in school 5 days a week. That's our goal, and that's the path putting forward. I think one of the other pieces, just to go along with that piece, that sometimes people get really frustrated about is that if you looked at Friday or Saturday's Portland Press Herald, when they talked about 1,309 cases of COVID in schools. Well, that's not exactly true. There was 1,309, I think it was, that were reported through the school process. What we find in our schools are relatively safe compared to the transmission of COVID that occurs. We're masked up. Majority of our staff is vaccinated. We're keeping distance. But the schools are kind of that piece that brings it all together from all of the community activities, because when your kid wakes up the next morning, is not feeling good, or have been identified as close contact, you pick up the phone and you call the school, because they're not going to be there, and you're trying to arrange homework and whatnot. So I think that's a challenge that schools face, is that the message of people who are scared or worried about things talk about cases in school, or really a majority of the time we're responding to all of the things that happen externally from the 7 hours that we deal with, and we push the information out and get it to the state. So we've had some great conversations recently with the commissioner of how we can code those at the state level to say, hey, wait, while we're reporting it as a school, this came from here, so that we can reassure people that the schools are the place and a safe place for their kids.
And the second part, not to that, is should we need to pivot, and I'm not even going to define what that means, how are our COVID funds still, our federal monies left over, the outstanding balance? Estimate is fine. If we needed to pivot, and not defining what that means, are we prepared? Do we have the finances? Do we have the resources still available from our COVID funds to help meet that need, if anything, to the end of this current school year?
So I guess it would, depending on what kind of pivot we would have to make. If it's a slight pivot, we're okay. If the world looked like April of 2020 and where we were, that's going to be a challenge. One of the things that we determined is that at 3 feet, as we know, the Saco School Department's at a pretty good place, because we're all back. At 6 feet, that's a very different story. So having to move back to that 6 feet piece in the classroom would be extremely challenging for us. I think that as we look at our COVID money, and if you look at the agenda for the school committee meeting next week, or this week, one of the places that we're just as tight as young school. That's not anything that any of us wouldn't know about anyway. And we're looking to use some of those funds to support an auxiliary building there with 4 extra classrooms that would not so much, it's not going to bring immediate relief and help us this year, but it's also looking at the future and to say, okay, we know that from our studies of reopening, we know that portion of town is seeing the most growth that would go to young school. We have probably would like to avoid the conversations over the next couple of budget cycles of, do you need a portable, do you not need another portable, and have some space there, just keep people spread out. The other biggest challenge that we will have coming our way is that there's probably no chance for us to have a new school building complete by the time the lease of Toddle Inn ends. So we need to start thinking about how we absorb some of that stuff, if it may be for a year, year and a half.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Johnston?
Thank you. Not so much a question, just really a comment. I'd like to personally thank, on behalf of my family, I believe really on behalf of many families, Superintendent Ray and your staff for getting us back to 5 days. I think given where we were last year, it really should be commended. So thank you.
You're welcome, and I would say that, again, the staff has worked incredibly hard to make that happen, as everybody who saw that need, and I think last April we were just maybe chasing the tail a little bit. We were able to get to a point where we say, okay, here's our clear focus, here's what we've got to do, and it, I would have to say, has been trying, but Nathan, I was in the same boat you were. I had two at home that needed school 5 days a week in their hometown. I know Mike was sitting in that position. I don't know the family situation. Marshall, I've seen you at some things before with kids, and at the end of the day, everyone said, hey, this is the direction we need to go. Let's get there. And I know that probably the way the leadership came together has been a little bit more interesting than maybe we would have expected of how our region solved these problems together. But thank you, Nathan.
Any further discussion? School board members, discussion? Councilor Archer.
I know this is very preliminary because I heard today in the news that I believe Pfizer, ages 5 to 11, very preliminary positive reports. Again, I know it still has to go to FDA and go through the emergency approval, but what does that look like for our school system if that is to be, let's just say, approved even in the emergency sense?
So, as I know that people will have their own individual family views on this.
And it's very preliminary at this
Yep.
point. It came out this morning, so I'll be fair.
So all I can speak about is what it would be like for Jeremy Ray as a parent making that choice. And all I can relate it to for Jeremy Ray as a parent making that choice is a scene from Willy Wonka and trying to find the golden ticket. Because the Rays are ready to go. I suspect that conversations, there will be some who may say, hey, that's not for me, and some who will say, I'm going after the golden ticket as soon as I possibly can. Give me the day, and I'm there. In communications with the commissioner and understanding is, I feel like that's the piece that, while I suspect the state is working extremely hard on their plans here, locally we have to tie into those plans and figure that out. One of the things I feel pretty good about is that over the course of last year, I think we had one clinic at Saco Middle School, and I had 5 or 6 clinics at Biddeford High School that we can open up regionally. There's good parking, and we've worked hand in hand with York County Emergency Management on several different occasions. What the challenge I foresee is that even in some of those clinics, getting 300 vaccinations in a day is a good day. And if that's, as it looks like Pfizer will be the one that will be first, that means there's two of those appointments. As you look at, if every parent between the 3 communities that we're working with now chose that piece, you could be looking at 2,500 kids to be vaccinated, and you know that every community is going to be the same way. So even if 1,500 of those, it's like, we're looking at 5 or 6 days of straight vaccinations and time out. In addition to the piece is that our staff are going to have young kids that may live in this community or in other communities and say, hey, look, I'm not turning down that appointment. I'm going to take, and I wouldn't blame them. I would encourage them to do that. So what I've asked the commissioner and the DOE is to involve superintendents in some of the conversations that are going on around if a rollout comes, what might be the best way for communities to, one, have them in their buildings, two, make it available at hours for staff and for working parents. And then the other piece is that, if this is available and if we had to say, hey, we could have our schools done on this day, there may be a time where we have to just say to people, hey, we got to take a time out for a day because this is so important. So I think that in those situations, all options need to be on the table. We need to work with our partners in the community to figure out, because the worst thing, in my opinion, that could happen is that schools are not sites for this, because if they're not, that's going to push everybody out searching, and I think that's going to be a real challenge for us to even hold school, just like it would be challenging if a booster came available and we went through what we did last spring of when people got an appointment, you wanted them to take it. And so you're 10 or 12 staff members down one day and you're 10 or 12 staff members down the next day. We have to get to a situation where we can have locally done in our schools.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay. School board members, thank you for joining us this evening.
Just
School superintendent?
at one piece, though, I would request is that we, as we come up on the budget, I think we start in December on that piece, and hopefully this year with the biennium budget is going to be pretty solid. What our subsidy number will be pretty quickly. Usually happens in the second year if things go well. I would request that we set those meeting dates of our joint fairly soon, because I do have 3 different communities I have to juggle these on, and that would just be really helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further? Okay. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Have a great day. Up next on the action items is item B. It's a public hearing, renewal application for special entertainment permit, Townhouse Pub, page 3 of the packet. That is Councilor Johnston.
Thank you. Townhouse Management, Inc., doing business as Townhouse Pub, has applied for a renewal of their special entertainment permit. The permit will be concurrent with the establishment's liquor license. Governor Mills, on March 17, 2021, signed new legislation to extend the liquor licensure period by 90 days, effective with renewal starting on March 18, 2021. This 90-day extension is based on the forced closure of in-person dining from March 18, 2020 through June 16, 2020. The applicant's new liquor license expiration will be December 21, 2022. The applicant has paid all applicable permit fees, and the clerk has properly advertised the public hearing in accordance with the Saco City Code, Chapter 93, Entertainment, Section 93-2. I move to open the public hearing.
Motion's been made by Councilor Johnston to open the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor McPhail to open the public hearing. Any discussion? Roll call vote to open the public hearing. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. The public hearing is now open at 7:40. Members wishing to speak on this item, please come forward and be heard. Seeing that nobody is seeking recognition, Councilor Johnston.
I move to close the public hearing and be it ordered that the City Council grant the renewal application submitted by Townhouse Management, Inc., doing business as Townhouse Pub, for a special entertainment permit to be concurrent with the establishment's current liquor license. I move to approve the order.
Motion's been made by Councilor Johnston. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Berman. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Brings us to item C, a first reading, zoning ordinance amendment, industrial zone uses. On page 5 in your packet, Councilor McPhail.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On April 12, 2021, the City Council adopted a new zoning ordinance. In this updated ordinance, 3 industrial zones, the I-1, I-2, and I-3 districts, were combined into a single district, the I district. While this change simplifies the ordinance, several uses that were previously allowed in the business and industrial parks were not included in the new ordinance and therefore no longer allowed. In order to allow for more flexibility within the industrial district and to increase alignment with the current and intended uses in the area, staff is requesting the council consider adding 8 uses to the industrial district. Please refer to the attached copy of Table 3-3 for the specific changes requested for consideration. The Planning Board held a public hearing on the proposed amendments during its June 29, 2021 meeting. After the public hearing, the board voted to recommend approval of the amendment with the addition of schools, public and private, as a permitted use in the BI and I districts. The change was in response to staff's request to allow schools in this area to be consistent with the Business Park Covenant amendments allowing schools as an emergency use. There was also public comment to the board requesting that private schools remain in allowed use. The board voted unanimously to forward a positive recommendation for the amendments as proposed. The City Council hereby approves the first reading of the industrial zone use zoning ordinance amendment and further moves to schedule a public hearing on October 4th, 2021.
Motion's been made by Councilor McPhail. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Hatch. Any discussion? Councilor Johnston?
Thank you. So, as I said several weeks ago, I believe, I don't so much have a problem with most of the additions of uses, but the schools, public schools specifically, still remains an issue for me. During that revision process, pretty early on when we started doing the uses, I think that the vast majority of that group really kind of honed in on the fact, given some recent ordeals that we had dealt with, that schools probably weren't the highest and best use of the industrial park land to begin with, and so that's why they got pulled out. Obviously, with the pandemic, we've made some changes to the covenants section. That, I believe, it went through as a short-term approval, so I don't really know if it makes that much sense without a need. I mean, presently, there is a need. I understand it could change tomorrow, but presently there is a need. So I don't think that changing the underlying zoning to allow schools makes a whole lot of sense. And then I think you kind of have a catch-22 here, where the next item we're talking about is the Phillips Springs, and we're looking to place or create covenants there. And again, we're disallowing schools in those covenants, yet the underlying zoning there allows schools. So, which one is it? Do we want schools in this area, or do we not want them there? I've felt for some time that any of the currently approved subdivided lots that exist that are zoned for industrial should remain industrial and not have that use. But as I've stated, over the last few months here with the Phillips Springs lot, those currently are not zoned as industrial lots. And again, preliminary conversations, but there has been, those lots, or that area, I should say, has been viewed as potentially a desirable location for a future school. It's obviously preliminary, and as I said a couple weeks ago, I don't know if we can say those lots particularly, but as the superintendent just stated, we're about to do a site inventory, and we already own these lots. So I've said for several months now, it doesn't make sense for us to be selling these lots. It doesn't make sense to be putting covenants on these lots until we have completed this site inventory. So not much has changed for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Berman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councilor Johnson that the industrial zoning is not appropriate for schools. I would note, however, that while the description in the packet hasn't changed, if I look at page 9 of the packet, that does seem to have changed. Schools are now no longer listed as a permitted or conditional use in the table, and I just want to double check with staff that that was a purposeful change in response to our discussion under new business. Is that correct, that the schools, looking at table 3.3, are now no longer a permitted or conditional use in this ordinance change?
Director Clavette?
First, I guess a little too loud here, just to respond to Councilor Johnston's and then to Councilor Berman's concerns and comments. Primarily, the underlying zoning is what is allowed or not allowed, and then the covenants are further prescriptive. And so if it's an allowed use, then it allows whether it's, then we don't have to do the emergency use for the covenants. So therefore, that is the rationale behind the first zoning change, which would allow schools to be there. But if you look at the covenants, it does not allow it, as a permitted or conditional use unless it's obtained in writing by the EDC and by the City Council. So I hope that that clarifies a little bit more. So I'm not sure if that does or muddies or clouds the waters, but essentially that's what this is all about. And then we don't have to come back for emergency use.
But to be, I guess to be clear, on the, when this was new business a week or two ago, on page 9, schools were listed as a permitted use. And in the current packet on page 9, those Ps have been removed from schools. Is the intent that they're still there and schools will be a permitted use if we make these changes? Or is the intent, the way it currently reads, that those Ps are not there and it is no longer a permitted use?
They're no longer.
Great, thank you.
Any questions? Councilor Johnston?
I don't have a question. I was just going to state, I think that where staff was coming from with this was, back in the summer when there was this blanket, approval for the covenants, they came to the conclusion or realization that the underlying zoning didn't allow the schools. So again, I totally get that and can appreciate where it's coming from. And obviously council has already approved a 1-year blanket use in the covenants for Spring Hill. But I just still, until we, have that need where the superintendent comes forward and says, hey, guys, we need this. We know it's a 3-meeting process. We can get through it. Why don't we wait until we need it? Otherwise, we run the risk. I mean, I've seen enough staff turnover in my years here that, this could get missed, and then 10 years from now, all of a sudden, we've got a request for a school in the industrial park. And I don't think that, that's the highest and best use of that land, particularly now that, council in the subsequent action has decided to sell off another chunk of land that was slated for business park use. So we kind of limited ourselves with what we have for our commercial sector. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Council Archer?
Yeah, I guess, is the confusion coming from the August 30th letter that states that this is what's going to be permitted, and then through discussion that we've had, it's been taken away, but it's still in the packet? Because again, that's how I look at it. I see a letter saying, hey, it's dated though, and obviously stuff happens after August 30th, but that initial letter in this packet, which is fact, this was drafted on August 30th, says permitted use public. But then when you go to the actual chart, which was earlier discussed by other counselors, it's no longer there. That's what we're voting on, is actually this, not the letter that was drafted. That's not the ordinance that will be drafted. It will be based on the table itself, so.
Correct. Again, if I may clarify, yes, that's, what you see in the packet, but I think I previously made a comment several meetings ago about the change occurring before it came to council. So I'm just expressing where I still stand on this to the rest of council, that I think we should leave it out of the use table. So if the rest of you are viewing it as such, then I'm fine with that. I'm just, again, expressing where I stand with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this item? Roll call vote on this item. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Brings us to item D, a first reading adoption of covenants for Phillips Spring Road, page 14 in your packet. Councilor Gunn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On July 26, 2018, the city of Saco purchased approximately 42 acres of land from Sweetser located off Moody Street, Interstate I-95 and Industrial Park, identified as Tax Map 42, Lot 1 for $700,000. A subdivision plan, including the construction of Phillips Spring Road, a parcel for the Public Works facility, and 2 additional vacant parcels, was approved by the Planning Board on July 30th, 2019. A prorated portion of Phillips Spring Road was funded by the City of Saco's Tax Increment Financing, or TIF, districts for business or industrial park access. City staff will sell these parcels through an RFP process beginning in the next several weeks. In advance of awarding an RFP for the purchase and sale of the Phillips Spring parcels, covenants for the subdivision must be adopted. Staff worked with attorney Tim Murphy to draft covenants consistent with the existing Millbrook and Spring Hill covenants. On September 13th, 2021, the Economic Development Commission unanimously voted to recommend the City Council adopt the Phillips Spring covenants as presented. The City Council hereby approves the first reading of the Phillips Spring covenants and further moves to schedule a public hearing on October 4th, 2021.
Motion's been made by Councilor Gunn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Purdy. Any discussion? Councilor Johnston?
Thank you. I think I somewhat just expressed it, but, here we have a case where we have lots that, at least as far as I can follow, and again, I was part of that revision process, these particular lots are not zoned for the industrial park. They used to be in the B8. I believe they sit in the Portland Road district now. The use is there for the zoning, so a school could perceivably go there. You put covenants, which in section 5.2 of prohibited use, we're now eliminating the use of schools. We're kind of handicapping the process. And so that's my concern as far as that portion. I do, after reading through this and reading the current covenants for both Spring Hill and Millbrook, I appreciate that staff and Attorney Murphy looks like they've made some efforts to address some issues that have popped up over the last several years. So I appreciate that, and I would like and hope going forward that we would kind of try to mirror the Spring Hill covenants and the Millbrook the way we have here. And just as an example, they added 4.9, which is leases and subleases. There's actually much more than that I think was well warranted. So again, for a future date, I think we should kind of mirror this language that's in the proposed covenants. The only other thing, as far as editing, I guess, that I would ask that under 6.1, modification by declarant, B and C, I believe we should strike or. It currently reads, prior to any such modification or amendment, declarant shall obtain the approval of the Economic Development Commission or City Council. I think and would be more appropriate, whereas the EDC is more of an advisory body and council is a legislative body. It would make sense for it to go to the EDC for a recommendation similar to how we do the planning board, and then ultimately council have a final say. So, I guess I could propose that amendment now.
Councilor Johnston, can you send that to the city administrator so they can draft an amendment for you for the
Yes.
next council meeting?
Works for me.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this item? Roll call vote. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Brings us to item E, a final reading budget amendment number 3, sidewalk design for Ferry Road, page 36 in your packet. Councilor Berman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council has requested an engineering design to extend Ferry Road sidewalks. Council amended the originally proposed amendment to make use of unassigned fund balance in lieu of funds previously appropriated for Route 112 traffic improvements. This brings total use of fund balance for fiscal year 2022 to 1.5 million, the highest of any year with recorded use of fund balance in our financial system. Be it ordered that City Council approves the second and final reading of Budget Amendment Number 3, fiscal year 2022. I move to approve the order.
Motion's been made by Councilor Berman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Purdy. Any discussion? Councilor Berman?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In my relatively short time on council, I had become convinced that the only two things which could really excite the public were large apartment buildings and dog ordinances. But here, I have to add a third one to the list, which is Ferry Road sidewalks. The number of emails and public turnout has been impressive. I can't wait to be able to safely walk down the road and meet all my neighbors who came out in support. I'm excited. I think the need is clear. House Representative Copeland just texted to let us all know that her district is the third fastest growing House district in Maine. Right? The number of people moving into our region is outstanding and makes it a clear and emergent need to address public safety. To me, the only questions are how we pay for it, right? The left or right pocket, as we heard my neighbors say. I know Director Fox had some concerns about using the 112 traffic TIF funds. I believe he sent an email to City Administrator Cainrath clarifying some of those concerns. I'm hoping City Administrator Cainrath can summarize some of those for us. I know Finance Director Salas also has some concerns about using the undesignated fund balance, and I hope she can express some of those concerns to us a little bit better. But I hope Council agrees the question is which account to use, not whether or whether it's now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Berman. Any further discussion? Councilor Johnston?
Thank you. I mean, obviously, we've had a lot of correspondence on this, both via email and I've had some in person. And while I don't think the finance director needs me defending her, some of the comments I think were a bit misdirected as far as whether or not she was opposed to this. I think that from a finance director perspective, she was just giving us her professional opinion, and ultimately it's up to council to make that decision. So I just wanted that to be clear, and I know there's probably some confusion out there in the public as to the role, but that's really it, and I can appreciate the opinion. I don't know if Director Fox is here, but I see the finance director. Perhaps she could address why she had the concern. I mean, me personally, I still have the concern with taking it from the TIF account, given that it would appear, Director Fox had a designated use for it. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councilor Archer?
Yeah, I also wanted to say, my concern is not the project, so let's just be clear on that one. That one is a go. It's just that taking it out of already a designated fund that's already truly designated for a project is then we're making a third pocket. And that's what I'm trying to prevent. The general fund, yes, so the way I'm taking it is just two professional departments trying to protect their monies. That's how I'm looking at this. You've got one trying to protect their funds, the other one's trying to protect their funds. But the one that was presented to us was for specifically, it's identified Route 112, the traffic, and we know that's going to happen. We've got the highway being built there, the new exits, potentially a school. There's a lot of work going on there, so we know the money's it's going to be spent in there. So mine was about adding this third pocket. I don't want to then have to go through this process in the future. When you use the undesignated fund, it's a one-time thing. It's like you take it out and then we're good. We can rebuild, I think, and you were on board as finance director when we built the fund balance back up to the 16% is 2 months, the best way to say it. It's 2 months of our expenses. We can do that through the budget process. So because this is a one-time account, I don't want to borrow from one pocket to pay the other pocket to then ask for another pocket in the future. This is a one-time shot. We call it good. We move it forward. We pay for the study, and then not have to borrow funds from other accounts that are already designated. So again, I'm for the project. Never been against that. I actually, when I grew up on the Ferry Road, I was driving home one day, and I remember leaving soccer practice on my bike at Saco Middle School. And I'd have to ride, and I was able to ride my bike all the way from Saco Middle School down to near Moody's Nursery. So I have had the privilege of riding my bike through that, not as an older adult, but as a kid back in the 90s. The road I considered safe at that time, but I was probably a dumb child at the moment. But I do believe the importance of this sidewalk, and it's always been about this third pocket. Let's get rid of it. Let's just take it out of the undesignated fund account. And I did see it between two professionals in two different departments just trying to protect their monies, which I truly understand. But it's definitely no harm. I'm for the as written.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion and roll call vote. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Brings us to item F, one reading, city acceptance, Lombard Lane, page 38 in your packet, and that is Councilor Gunn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mike Mitten, Lansdowne Development Company, LLC, has requested review of city street acceptance of Lombard Lane within Lombard Estates subdivision approved by the Planning Board in 2017. The subdivision includes 10 residential lots. Mr. Mitten has completed all items of concern to the Department of Public Works, submitted as-built plans, and a warranty deed of conveyance to the city. The city attorney and all of their pertinent departments are supportive of acceptance. The Planning Board made a positive recommendation to accept this street at its meeting on August 17th, 2021. The Planning Board has forwarded a positive recommendation to the City Council. I move to accept Lombard Lane as a city street.
Motion's been made by Councilor Gunn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Purdy. Discussion? Councilor Johnston?
Thank you. I mean, as much as it pains me to accept dead-end streets, I mean, clearly, at least in this particular case, this developer has met the requirements. So I will support it, but I still remain in the same position I've been for years where, you know, we really need to look at changing this ordinance that, you know, really promotes connectivity and not hammerheads. I mean, we're starting to see more and more of them. At least in this particular case, there's at least 11 lots. That I'm aware of some that, you know, 3 houses sit on. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on accepting Lombard Lane? Roll call vote. Councilor.
So you're saying it's a city lane acceptance, not a city street acceptance?
Lombard Lane, except as a city street.
City lane is acceptance.
Yes.
And I am a yes.
Thank you. Councilor Purdy.
Yes.
Councilor Gunn.
Yes.
Councilor Berman.
Yes.
Councilor Hatch.
Yes.
Councilor McPhail.
Yes.
Councilor Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Brings us to item G, one reading ambulance billing write-off, page 45 in your packet. Councilor Hatch.
As of May 1st, 2021, the town of Freeport is no longer billing for ambulance services on behalf of the city of Saco. The finance director has performed an analysis of the patient records provided by Freeport upon close of the account and recommends that the city write off a number of these accounts. There is no financial impact from this write-off, as a contra asset account in the ambulance fund is already used to account for receivables that are deemed uncollectible. The remaining 576 patient accounts are recommended to be sent to collections in alignment with the city's billing and collections policy. Account details are not disclosed to protect patient privacy. Staff recommends approval. Be it ordered that the finance director write off 2,578 ambulance billing accounts in the amount of $1,063,698.56, and further that 576 accounts as indicated be transferred to a collections agency for further efforts to collect on remaining balances. I move to approve the order.
Motion's been made by Councilor Hatch. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor McPhail. I think at this time we'll bring up Finance Director Salas. Finance Director Salas, thank you for joining us and welcome back.
Certainly. Good evening. Wow, it's great to be back in council chambers. The details were laid out pretty clearly in the memo and in the item commentary, but I did perform an extensive analysis of the information that I received from Freeport upon close of our relationship with them as our billing partner. And I do believe that the accounts recommended for write-off, really very immaterial amounts would be collected if we were to attempt further action. And especially considering the age of some of these as old as 10 years, it would be best to simply write them off, and there's no financial impact. Are there any further questions?
Thank you. Councilor Archer?
Yes, these questions are for me, but really, in some cases, I feel when you're trying to write off $1 million, you have to inform the public. To just vote on this, I don't think would be without providing some input. So I understand the reason for this, and I will be supporting this. But again, there's this public knowledge sense when you're just saying, you don't owe us $1 million. Just using your professional opinion and estimates are fine. How much of this $1 million do you think we could actually collect if time wasn't a concern? Based on the history of these accounts, just a general, quick, won't hold you to it type of thing.
Typically,
10%, 5%?
Probably 1 to 2%.
So 1 to 2%.
Realistic.
So to the public, we're looking at collecting 10 to 20,000 of this million. How
Yes.
much would it cost to try to collect 10 to 20,000 in these accounts specifically? Estimate is fine.
Yeah, so we would transfer the accounts to a collections agency per policy. So typically their fee is between 30 and 40%. So were we to anticipate 2% collection, which is $20,000, you would be looking at paying $8,000 of that just to the collections agency.
Okay.
So really we're talking at best $12,000.
And that would be for 2,000, just make sure I'm right, 2,570 accounts. How long would that take, estimate?
I mean, the strongest performance is typically in the first year, so if we were to get 12,000, it would probably be in the first maybe 2 years of placement, so we're talking 6,000 a year. And one item to consider in making the decision, there's the potential revenue of $12,000 over 2 years. Then there's the political ramifications of sending a bill to a collections agency for a patient who thought their insurance had paid it already, where the bill, some of these accounts, the bill was never actually sent for whatever reason. Some of these accounts, the patient had already made some payment on it. So you might have some members of your community reaching out wondering why the city has sent this very old bill to a collections agency. So there's that consideration for our citizens as well that's built into this.
With that in mind, we'd also be considering significant staff hours?
Again, we'd make use of a collections agency, so staff time for my department would be minimal. This is really more about, unlikely to collect much revenue and taking into consideration members of our community who haven't gotten a bill in 5 years and suddenly they're dealing with collections and these bills being posted to their credit. So that kind of consideration.
For consideration, and again, this is my understanding, is very little reward on this $1 million that we're weighing off. Plus, when you take into consideration just good customer service, trying to collect a bill after 6 years later, it's not worth, and I'm saying this, and I'm usually very budget cautious, it could be considered a net loss to the city trying to collect this money if we don't waive it. If we choose not to waive it, it would be even a more expense.
Yes, I agree. You would probably get a lot of requests from members of your districts. Can you please write this off? So then those bills would just come back to council in the form of a series of item commentaries, which would be time intensive for everyone involved.
So the most fiscally responsible way to handle this is to waive it. Would that be a fair?
Yes, I certainly agree with your conclusion.
Thank you. And that's why I'm supporting the waiver of $1 million. Or not waiver, what's the best way? Write-off. Thank you.
Thank you. Finance Director Salas, with Freeport no longer handling the billing during the separation, I would say, was there any reason as to why bills weren't sent for multiple years? Was there any indication from the town of Freeport as to why they allowed for this ongoing non-billing of patients?
It was only in the last the last week when I went through and analyzed the patient data that I had visibility into the fact that this had been going on. And since our relationship was severed in May, I didn't feel that it would be appropriate to try and chase Freeport down and ask them about some of these very old balances. I do believe that we made the right decision in moving forward with Quick Med Claims as our billing partner. And I think part of the reason that this wasn't looked into or addressed earlier is simply that my department has had severe staffing challenges in the past year for a number of different reasons. So.
And the new billing company, will that be looked over a little bit with?
Yes, I'm working with our internal auditor in the department to establish a very robust monthly audit procedure where we're getting some additional information of the status of patient accounts. And we also have a very strong partner. Our account manager has also been looking very closely at our receivables balances and provided some great industry best practices for implementation in our emergency services so that we minimize this sort of issue going forward.
Thank you. Councilor Johnston, then Councilor Hatch.
Thank you. Yeah, I support this also. I think that Councilor Archer summarized it very well, and so did the finance director. I think it really says more, as the mayor just pointed out, about the future and how we build in the past. I mean, anybody that is involved in trying to collect billing generally knows that when it's as much as 10 years old, you're good luck, you're not getting it. So the only other thing I would add is for the public, this is really about a charge for a service. Now, obviously, there's probably some costs associated with that, whether it's bandages or whatever on the ambulance. Generally speaking, the staffings are being paid for, so it's not like we're necessarily losing something. And then the only other thing is, this affects the ambulance fund and no other funding. So it's, it would have stayed in that fund anyway to be expended upon ambulance uses. So thank you.
Councilor Hatch.
Yeah, I just wanted to address the systemic problems. It sounds like these are going to be resolved under our new process, so I guess that's a good thing. And if that's successful, then we are unlikely to see this reoccur to this magnitude, unless we have a major issue. I'm just curious, did we have a legal contract with the town of Freeport for the collection of this? So for the collections piece, the contract with Freeport stated that after a certain amount of time, the accounts would be transferred to Thomas Agency. So through November of 2016, accounts had been placed with Thomas Agency on a fairly regular basis. And part of the transition between finance directors, the collections transfer had fallen off, and I identified that collections activity with Thomas Agency was not up to industry standards. And then in the interim, also identified that it would be best for us to go out to RFP on our ambulance billing services, and therefore, again, we didn't want to place additional accounts with Thomas Agency if we knew we were going to be changing billing partners. So that's why there was a bit of a pause. However, there are over 500 accounts that will be transferred to collections, and a lot of those accounts are accounts with balances less than 5 years old that were never transferred to Thomas Agency. So we're going to be making up for lost time, so to speak, in that process. I guess the point of my question was whether or not, if there is a contract between us and the town of Freeport in which performance standards weren't met, were there any remedies in that contract, financial remedies, that we could pursue to recoup some of our, if they did not perform to the standard that we contracted them to perform at, whether or not there are any financial remedies. And if so, I would encourage us to pursue those. We did review the contract with our city solicitor, and he identified that there really wasn't any avenue to pursue because they did meet the terms of the contract. The terms of the contract simply were probably not as robust as they should have been for this particular service. One other note, write-offs have been made a regular part of the financial process. It is supposed to be something that's addressed on an annual basis, not just for ambulance billing, but for all of our billing, and it's not something that we've had a procedure in place for before, so when you go 10 years with no write-offs occurring in the finance department, you will build some of these very large balances, and that just has to do with, setting in some good practices on an annual basis, so we're addressing these as they come up rather than waiting 10 years.
Any further questions, Council Archer?
And when you mentioned the 10 years, legally after 7 years, it's no longer technically collectible? Is that accurate?
That would be something I would have to do further research on. I was under the impression that unless written off by council, it's still collectible.
I was thinking from the debt side of, and we have a commercial banker who
I believe after 7 years, it falls off your credit report.
falls off your credit report, and
Yeah, technically, it could still be owed to the city of Saco, but collection efforts, again, unlikely to be successful past that time. So.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Thank you, Finance Director Salas.
Thank you.
Roll call vote. Council Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. That brings us to item 10, which is new business. There's one item, item A, marijuana business uses, zoning updates, page 48 in your packet, and that is Councilor McPhail. Councilor McPhail, are you willing to stay on as the council liaison to that?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to bring up City Planner Jason Garnham. City Planner Garnham, thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Doyle. Good evening, members of the council. So I'm here to present basically a sneak preview of two separate but obviously related marijuana zoning initiatives that we're working on in the planning office. To be absolutely clear, medical marijuana uses, growing and retail dispensaries, are regulated separately from adult use and recreational marijuana businesses, which is everything from growing, manufacturing, testing, and retail. So the first initiative I wanted to discuss with you is that the planning board, during a workshop discussion last week, essentially encouraged the planning staff, to begin drafting potential regulations for authorizing recreational adult use marijuana businesses to operate in the city of Saco. This would be opting in, which the city has to do, is not required to do, to be clear, but in order for any type of recreational adult use marijuana businesses to operate in the city of Saco, an ordinance has to be adopted specifically for that purpose. So I wanted to let you know that we are going to be devising some draft definitions and zoning land use provisions for you and the board and stakeholders to comment on, discuss, and take some hearty whacks at. I'm calling it the marijuana piñata. So I wanted to bring that to your attention and solicit any feedback, questions, and initial sort of information that you would want me to put in my notes as we go forth in drafting those. Before we get into that, I also wanted to let you know about a second marijuana-related zoning initiative that is more closely tied to the moratorium that is currently in place. And that is for amendments to the zoning code related to medical retail dispensaries of marijuana businesses. And for that, we discussed a draft ordinance during a hearing in last week's planning board meeting, and the planning board did recommend for your review and approval changes to the current zoning ordinance that would no longer allow dispensaries for retail of medical marijuana in downtown or general business zoning districts. The council can't act on that in the capacity of a decision-making body until a certain amount of time has transpired from the board's recommendation. So we will be bringing that to you as a hearing item at your next meeting. So are there any questions, or would you like for me to go into a little bit more detail about the policy aspect?
Thank you. Any questions at this time? Councilor Berman?
Not so much a question, just a comment that I thought the packet was really well prepared. I thought the Maine Municipal Association's cheat sheet was very clear. It answered a lot of questions I'd had previously. And I thought the draft ordinance changing some of where medical dispensaries are located did a good job of striking the balance between allowing some use in the proper places, but also prohibiting the use in some places where we might not want it. So I thought it was very clear. I really appreciate it, and really support the work you've been doing.
Thank you. And to be clear, too, while there is an active ordinance being reviewed for pertaining to medical marijuana businesses, there's an opportunity to completely reevaluate that as part of this broader adult use marijuana businesses program that we'll be working with you and the board and other stakeholders on. But for now, this was the direction that we received from the board.
Thank you. Any other questions? Council, would you like a more in-depth explanation, or we'll wait for the item to come before us at first reading? Council Archer.
Yeah, I don't know the law. This is a great overview, but our dispensaries, whatever we want to call them, retail, I know there's many different versions. Are there prohibitions from like being near schools and things like that? Because when we put it in the zone, I just want to make sure process is better. Like, so if it's in the zone and then you find it's 500 feet within a school, that will nullify it by default, correct? We don't have to like break zones up.
Well, so there's a whole wedding cake of regulations for marijuana businesses. So not only is there a distinction between the medical dispensaries and then the recreational, so-called adult use businesses, but there are also some evidently federal and state rules that apply to each of those uses separately. And one of the tasks really before us as staff is to figure out exactly which elements of those rules should be included in the zoning code so that it's explicit,
okay,
and understand to a certain degree, without becoming marijuana attorneys ourselves, understand which things we can kind of safely leave out because they're part of the state permitting process.
Okay. Because I've seen in the past, and it's obviously no one's fault, it's just there's so much information that municipalities go through, is we don't always catch everything. So I don't want to accidentally start an argument when a business thinks, oh, it's B1, I'm free and clear, and then you just happen to be next to, for example, Thornton Academy has some like off-site buildings, and I just want to make sure it's as clear to anybody who tries to come into our community, knowing what the clear rules are. I don't want to create like separate zones by any means, but make sure that all those are weeded out in the process or identified.
I agree with you 100%. I think clarity is really important, and this effort is going to involve close eye from Tim Murphy, the city solicitor. We'll be pulling in folks from the police department, code enforcement, and to be clear too, the city will have the authority to devise criteria specific to those uses. So if there are things that come out during our stakeholder involvement and during discussion, we can consider baking those into design and location criteria or permitting guidelines, or into a conditional use process, so on and so forth. This could become fairly complex. I'm not naive. I know that this initiative could take a while to fully bake and prepare for adoption, but that's where we're at today. Pun intended, by the way.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Councilor Johnston, then Councilor McPhail. Councilor
Thank
Johnston.
you. You may not have the answer for this. I was just thinking about it. So I understand that the state law distinctively separates medical from adult use. Does that mean the zoning ordinance itself has to, or can you just define the use as marijuana-related growing? Because I don't look at them different. I don't think any of us really does at this point. I mean, medical growing is the same as adult use to me. So do you have to define them differently, or can we lump marijuana uses all together and then zone them appropriately?
My opinion is that at this point in time, and with the very specific sort of distinctions between the different uses and the actual licensing that is required by the state, I suspect that most legal professionals would advise all of us to maintain those distinctions and to define them specifically and to zone them specifically as different things, even though I understand, having the same perspective that you do, a dispensary retail probably doesn't look any different on the outside or the inside from a recreation retail business. They'll have the same green leaf over the door, and a store's a store. But I think at this point in time, as I already said, it's probably the safest course to keep those uses separated in the code, because there are so many legal and process and licensing distinctions that are outside of what we can see.
Okay, thank you. Going through that revision process, again, it was very brief, we kind of touched upon it. I found it kind of confusing where in the old ordinance and even in the current ordinance, we have different distinctions for really the same thing. In many instances, we call a dispensary, and then we also call it retail. So I just want to make sure going forward we have it figured out exactly to what the intent is.
It is confusing, and we're going to do our best to make it clear. I wasn't there, of course, but I might draw a parallel to perhaps what local and state governments were going through back when Prohibition ended, and perhaps we're drawing distinction between bootleg liquor and beer and ale and all these different kinds of things, and trying to decide who could sell what and where. That's where we are today with marijuana.
Councilor McPhail, then Councilor Archer. Councilor McPhail.
Thank you. I was just going to touch base with Councilor Archer. I actually did a lot of research on your school question this weekend, and the two determinations that I found out is, and to actually go on Councilor Johnston's, they are very separate. There is an adult use, which has its own main statute, and there is the medical, which has its own statutes. It was kind of interesting that the adult use was 1,000 yards from the front door of a school, or nursery, pre-K, anything that's classified as a public or private school. Calculated it out. I got onto Google, had to calculate. It comes out to roughly about 0.7 miles. So in relation, it would be Fairfield to Main Street. That is 880 feet. Technically, no. I mean, it would depend on how far, because again, Burns, Fairfield, both were within less than that 1,000 yards for adult use, but the medical was only 500 feet. Which is basically right around the corner. Correct. So that is the minimum statute, but it did state that municipalities can adjust that if we choose to. But looking at the Industrial Park Road and where we potentially could be looking at a school, we might not be wanting to change that yet because it could limit some of our existing businesses or areas that we have defined if Portland Road or Industrial Park, the potentials of the new schools, so. Correct. Correct. Toddlin on Cross Street, Little Folks on Beach Street, ours on, yep, and yeah, so yeah, there's a lot of, yep.
Councilor Archer?
I understand. There is a whole other subset of legal, legal considerations around regulation of signage. So I don't know to what extent we can control the exact type of messaging that goes along with these businesses, but certainly it's something we can look at.
Any further questions, comments? City Planner Garnham, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Have a great night.
On to item 11, administrative updates. City Administrator Canrath.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Starting with the climate action resolution, to follow up on this, as you know, was passed almost, or just under 1 year ago. I'm currently working with SMPDC and actively investigating some opportunities to look at greenhouse gas reduction, as well as resiliency and sustainability opportunities with our city government. I anticipate this will be coming forward in a more formal, in-depth report in the very near future to identify specific opportunities and goals that we can work on. So stand by for that. That will be coming shortly. And we'll also be working to put together some training programs and opportunities for our senior staff, and then hopefully all staff at some point, to teach them new ways to promote energy efficiency and look for ways to improve in their own departments throughout the city. Election Day is coming up on November 2nd. As I announced previously, absentee ballots will be available beginning October 4th in the city clerk's office, and you can also request one of those online through the city clerk's office. An update on our Jenkins Road, Route 112 intersection. We have now officially closed on the residential property at 2 Hillview Avenue for a purchase price of $390,000 in anticipation of future work there, and that all went smoothly last week. And lastly, my next city administrator's public open office hours will be on September 28th from 3:30 to 5 here in the auditorium. Of course, all Saco residents and local business owners are welcome and encouraged to attend. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for City Administrator Canrath? Okay, moving on to item 12, council discussion and comment. Any council discussion and comment tonight? Councilor Berman?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was struck with the Saco Little League and the school board were here, but the number of people in our audience that were wearing masks in response to the COVID pandemic, and the two cultures we've developed in Saco, where some of our public buildings require masks and others don't. That was coupled with the superintendent's statement that COVID is the #1 challenge they face in keeping our buildings open 5 days a week. I've also received correspondence from my constituents saying that they're shocked when they come into public buildings and find both city staff and the public not wearing masks in the midst of a pandemic. And for all those factors, I would urge the city administration to rethink our optional policy on masks and consider reinstituting a mask mandate for public buildings.
Thank you. Any further council discussion and comment? Council Archer?
Yeah, we haven't talked about it for a while, so possibly a future agenda or an update on the teen center. When we first purchased it about 2 years ago, give or take, I mean, we had the COVID outbreak, but things are looking positive. Yes, we have some variants going out there, but would it be possible to maybe even get that teen center going by this April? If we're back to school 5 a day, there is a certain transition back to normalcy, but with caution, I guess is the fairest way to say it.
We will get an update
But
at one
updates
of the
or
next
progresses
council
would be great. Thank you.
Moving on to item 13, there is an executive session item for a personnel update. Is there a motion to enter executive session?
Be it ordered that the City Council enter an executive session pursuant to MRSA Title I, Chapter 13, Subchapter 1, Section 4056, Personnel Update.
Motion's been made by Councilor McPhail. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Hatch. Any discussion? Roll call vote to enter executive session. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 to enter into executive session at 8:37 PM, and the executive session will be downstairs in the conference room, We're back from executive session. Is there a motion to exit executive session?
So moved.
Councilor McPhail, is there a second?
Second.
Councilor Gunn. Any discussion on exit executive session? Roll call vote. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 to come out of executive session at 9:45. Any report from executive session?
No report.
No report. Moves to item 15. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Councilor Berman, is there a second?
Second.
Councilor Hatch. Any discussion on adjournment? Roll call vote. Councilor Archer?
Aye.
Councilor Purdy?
Yes.
Councilor Gunn?
Yes.
Councilor Berman?
Yes.
Councilor Hatch?
Yes.
Councilor McPhail?
Yes.
Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 to adjourn at 9:45. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening.